I died on a bitterly cold winter night, with the wind howling and snow swirling in the air. The daughter I raised with my own hands, Emily, drove me, weak and barely clinging to life from terminal cancer, back to the countryside. She threw me roughly onto the floor of an old, abandoned house that hadn't been lived in for years. She looked at me coldly and said, "Susan, you're already in the late stage of cancer. There's no point in trying to save you. It'd be a waste of resources. I'll just send you back to die where you belong." I couldn't believe it. Emily really planned to leave me here to die on my own. Furious and heartbroken, I asked her, "Why? Why are you doing this to me? I'm your biological mother. Aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning for this?" "You are not my real mother," she sneered. "Since you're already dying, I'll let you die knowing everything, crystal clear. My real mom was a city woman. 25 years ago, you and she gave birth around the same time. You delivered a stillborn baby, while my mom had a boy-girl twin pair. My dad, worried that his parents in the countryside had no one to take care of them, swapped me with your dead baby. He tricked you into staying behind to look after my grandparents, while he took my mom and my twin brother to enjoy life with the army." I was barely breathing, but I couldn't accept this cruel truth. "No, that's not possible." "It is the truth," Emily said coldly. "Whether you accept it or not, doesn't matter." Then she dropped another bombshell. "Since you're about to die, I'll tell you one more thing. You're not some orphan with no one to care for you. You're actually the biological daughter of the richest man in D.C. Seeing the shock on my face, she continued, "That keepsake you gave my dad, your token of love, was actually something your parents left for you. My dad used it to help my mom steal your identity for all these years. Your dumb parents never suspected she was a fraud. How could you all be so vicious and shameless?" I asked, trembling. "People die for wealth just like birds die for food. Haven't you heard that saying?" she snapped. "My mom took your identity and became a rich heiress. She lived in luxury, dressed in the finest clothes, was waited on hand and foot, and didn't lift a finger. She had it all. And you? You worked your fingers to the bone in the dirt, bent over in the fields, serving as a free nanny for my grandparents for your entire life. And now you're dying from this incurable illness." At that point, Emily couldn't help but laugh proudly. "Susan, your life has been utterly pathetic. That's your fate. You were born for this." Already on the verge of death, hearing these shocking and outrageous truths pushed me over the edge. Rage surged through me, and I suddenly coughed up a mouthful of blood. Seeing me like that, the daughter I raised showed no sympathy, none. Instead, she said coldly, "Since you spent your life taking care of me and my grandparents, and gave up your identity for my mom, I'll give you a proper burial when you die." Then the door was locked from the outside. Lying on the freezing floor, I could feel death slowly creeping in. Pain and despair filled every inch of my body. And in that bitterly cold winter night, I died. But before my consciousness completely slipped away, I made a vow. If there's another life, I will make Ken, Linda, and that whole despicable family pay with blood. By heaven's grace, I was reborn. The moment I opened my eyes, I heard a woman's loud voice. "Sue, your man Ken is back from military leave. He brought tons of stuff with him. Stop working and hurry home to see him." I stared, stunned, at the woman in front of me. It was Gloria, the village chief's wife, but she looked like she was decades younger. Seeing that I didn't respond and just kept staring, she got anxious. She nudged me and said, "Why aren't you saying anything, Sue? My husband said Ken's home this time to take his family with him to the army base. But from what your in-laws are saying, he's not taking you. He's taking that white-collar city girl instead." "Not that I want to talk behind anyone's back," she added, lowering her voice. "But you really should keep an eye on your man. Don't let that city girl, Linda, squeeze her way in. I'm telling you, I don't think her intentions toward Ken are pure." These exact words, this heartfelt warning, Gloria had said to me in my past life. But back then, I didn't take it seriously. Turns out she wasn't just stirring up drama. She was telling the truth. After Gloria rushed off, I didn't do what I did in my last life. I didn't rush home in a panic to go see Ken. Instead, I sat on the edge of the field for a long, long time. I replayed everything from my past life, from beginning to end, sorting through every detail until it was all crystal clear in my mind. Only then did I stand up and head home. Just before I got there, I ran into my mother-in-law, Martha. She had been chatting happily with some neighbors, her face glowing with laughter. But the moment her eyes landed on me, her face instantly turned cold, and her smile disappeared. "Why are you coming back empty-handed? Didn't you say you were going out to cut grass for the cows? Where's the grass? If you don't cut grass, what are the cows going to eat?" In my last life, I spent decades cutting grass. I had already done more than enough of that. In this life, I wasn't going to cut a single blade. If someone loves cutting grass so much, they can go do it themselves. I ignored Martha completely and walked right past her. Behind me, I heard her venomous voice. "Shameless woman. Heard my son's back and now doesn't want to do a thing. So eager to see a man, huh?" I had to suppress the overwhelming urge to slap that old hag across her smug face. Without a word, I marched straight to the front door of the house. Just as I reached the entrance, the door opened from the inside. Out walked Linda, her face glowing with satisfaction and her lips tinged with fresh red lipstick. As soon as she saw me, her smile faded slightly. Tilting her head, she subtly showed off the fresh hickey on her neck and said, "Back so early? You must have come home after hearing Ken's back, huh?" I stared coldly at the red mark on her neck. It was just like last time. Every time Ken was home, hickeys would show up on Linda's neck every few days. And foolishly, I used to think it was just insect bites. I never realized that Linda was flaunting her relationship with Ken right in my face. They had been sneaking around behind my back for who knows how long. Linda was proud of herself, strutting in front of me like a peacock, flaunting how irresistible she was to Ken. Aside from the hickey, she also wore a jade pendant around her neck, the very one I had once given Ken as a token of love. That alone should have been enough to tell me something was off. In my past life, I was blind and naive. I deserved to be fooled. Seeing my gaze fixed on her neck, Linda smiled even wider. Ken came back with a bunch of gifts for me and the boy, clothes, scarves, even a watch. He said he didn't want us to suffer, that he promised Spring he'd take care of me and the child. I felt bad at first, but I couldn't refuse him, so I accepted everything. I had heard these exact words too many times in my last life. At first I was heartbroken. I had tried to ask Ken for the same care and affection, even gifts, but Ken shut me down with one sentence. "Spring died saving me. He lost his life. Isn't it natural that I look after his wife? What, do you want to lose your husband too like Linda did?" I had loved Ken so deeply in that life, so blindly, that I couldn't bear to curse him like that. So out of love, I tolerated everything. But not this time. Not anymore. Linda would get what she deserved in time. I shoved her aside and strode into the courtyard, heading straight for the bedroom I shared with Ken. I pushed open the door and found him there, smoking. The room reeked not only of cigarettes, but also carried another foul, nauseating scent. And thinking about Linda's smug face just now, everything became crystal clear. Ken, this disgusting excuse for a man, had been with that tramp in our room. They had no shame. Rage surged in me, and I clenched my fists tightly. Ken noticed me standing at the door, staring at him. He put out his cigarette and said slowly, "You're back. I was just about to come find you. I came home this time for something important." I didn't respond. I just stared at him with ice-cold eyes. Ken didn't seem to care. He had never really taken me seriously. He continued. "The Army's issued an official notice. Families are now allowed to live on base. I'm planning to take Linda and the kid with me." "So Linda is your family now?" I asked, pronouncing each word carefully and clearly. Ken's expression darkened. He gave me a quick glance and, sensing something in my eyes, softened his tone. "Sue, I promised Spring, on his deathbed, that I'd take care of Linda and the boy. As a soldier, keeping your word is everything. So, I'm sorry, but this means you'll have to stay behind." In my past life, when I heard Ken wanted to take that so-called savior's widow with him to live on the military base, of course I refused. I cried, I argued, I begged him to reconsider. But it didn't work. Ken just coldly told me, "If you won't agree to this, then we'll divorce." I had fallen in love with Ken at first sight, loved him with all my heart. When I heard he wanted to divorce me, I couldn't bear the thought. So I swallowed my pride, endured everything, and let him have his way. The very next day, Ken took Linda and her son to the base, and that's when my 30-year nightmare began. Ken's parents were in poor health. His father had chronic lung disease and was on medication year-round. Just the medical bills alone were a heavy burden, and Ken, being stationed with the army, rarely sent money home. Because I loved Ken, I sympathized with how hard his life was. I was willing to suffer myself, working like a spinning top just to earn money for his father's medical expenses. His mother Martha was known in the whole area as a loud-mouthed troublemaker, lazy and greedy. She was absolutely no help around the house. Even during the busiest seasons on the farm, when I asked her to come with me to the fields to help with the harvest, she'd always find a way to cause problems. Martha's greatest skill was faking illness. She'd do a little bit of work, then dramatically collapse. At first, I really thought she was sick. I'd drop everything in a panic and rush her to the clinic. But later, whenever she started getting sick, the moment we entered the fields, I realized she was just pretending to avoid work. She didn't just dodge farm work, she wouldn't help out at home either. I'd come back from a full day in the fields only to find cold pots and empty stoves. I had to cook for the whole family and serve them dinner. Once they were fed and full, Martha and her husband Frank would burp contentedly and stroll out to chat with neighbors. And me? I never had a moment's rest. I had to boil pig slop, feed the pigs, wash everyone's clothes, and still find time to tutor Emily. Back then, I was truly stupid and naive. Because I loved Ken, I silently endured everything from his parents. I never complained, never asked for anything, just so Ken could focus on his military career without any worries. I worked myself to the bone for decades. Under my care, Emily got into college and finally left the countryside behind. Ken's parents enjoyed the fruits of my labor and lived well into their 80s or 90s, perfectly healthy and worry-free. Their whole family lived in comfort while I aged prematurely from overwork and fell seriously ill in my 50s. By the time I was diagnosed with cancer, Ken had been transferred thousands of miles away to a high-ranking post in the Western Military District. The higher his position, the harder it was to even get in touch with him. I knew I couldn't count on him. So I took my diagnosis and went to the one person I had raised with my blood, sweat, and tears, my daughter Emily, hoping she'd take me to the hospital. I never imagined she would dump me right back in the countryside and coldly reveal the truth, killing me with the shock and heartbreak. Even though I had already been reborn and had time to digest all the pain and betrayal from my previous life, the scars ran too deep. So when I heard Ken say those same cruel words again, I couldn't stop myself from shaking. He noticed I was silent and glaring at him with pure hatred. Frowning, clearly annoyed, he asked, "Why aren't you saying anything?" I said, "Go to hell, you bastard." When dealing with heartless trash like him, fists speak louder than words. I raised my hand and slapped Ken hard across the left side of his face. Caught off guard, Ken stumbled back, stunned and furious. "Sue, are you out of your mind? You dare hit me?" Before he could even finish, I smacked him again, this time on the right side, leaving both cheeks perfectly symmetrical. Enraged by being hit, Ken lunged at me in fury. But there was no way I'd let him land a single blow. Before he could touch me, I aimed straight at his most vulnerable spot and grabbed with deadly precision. Ken screamed in agony, his face turning green from the pain. The sound of his shrieking echoed far and wide. Hearing his pained cries, Martha and Linda burst into the room. They found Ken doubled over, clutching his groin, groaning in torment. Linda immediately ran to him in panic, checking him with concern. Martha, seeing her son's miserable state, went into full attack mode. Screaming obscenities, she charged at me and tried to yank my hair. Like hell I'd let her touch me. I sidestepped, grabbed her by the collar, and slammed her straight into the wardrobe. Years of manual labor had made me strong, and I didn't hold back. Martha never imagined I'd actually fight back. She hit the wardrobe with a crash, blood spurting from her nose as she screamed in pain. Linda, who was still helping Ken, stood up and snapped. "Sue, are you insane? How dare you lay a hand on his mother?" But I wasn't done yet. I didn't just want to beat up Martha. I wanted to teach this shameless Linda a lesson too. Before she could finish speaking, I grabbed her hair with one hand and started slapping her across the face, fast and hard. Blood trickled from her mouth and nose. She shrieked in pain. At that moment, Frank, along with Emily and Linda's son, rushed into the room, alarmed by the commotion. Frank, frail and sickly, didn't have the strength to stop me. All he could do was curse and yell at me to let go. Seeing me beating Linda to a pulp, both Emily and Linda's son sprang forward to help her. I didn't want to lay a hand on any children. I had no intention of hurting them. But those two little brats completely crossed the line. Emily grabbed onto my leg and bit down hard. Linda's son started punching and kicking me. I could understand Linda's son stepping in to help. He was protecting his mother. But Emily, that ungrateful little witch, was helping an outsider attack me. That wasn't normal. That could only mean one thing. She already knew the truth. Fury surged through me. I let go of Linda, whose face I had already slapped black and blue, and grabbed a fistful of Emily's hair. She cried out in pain and loosened her bite. I yanked her head up and slapped her 3-4 times across the face, then delivered a vicious kick straight to her chest. Emily flew out the door and crashed onto the ground in the courtyard. Linda's son followed right after her, sent flying by another hard kick from me. The two little beasts landed face first in the dirt, knocked their teeth out, and lay there with bloody mouths, screaming in agony. Meanwhile, I dusted off my hands, fixed my hair, and let out a wailing scream of my own. Help! I'm being murdered! The Ken family's trying to kill me! My cries echoed through the neighborhood, and within moments, curious neighbors came rushing over to see what was happening. When they saw Ken, Linda, and the two kids beaten and bloodied, they were stunned. As soon as I spotted people gathering, I quickly threw myself down in the courtyard, beating the ground and howling before Martha could get a word in. Oh God, why is my life so bitter? I worked myself to the bone, and this is how they treat me. Ken, you and your family are monsters. You all ganged up to beat me. The truth was, the Kens didn't have a good reputation in the village. Martha was known far and wide for being a foul-mouthed shrew who constantly picked fights and made enemies. Ken's father, Frank, a sickly man, had a habit of stealing fruits and vegetables from neighbors' gardens, and whenever he got caught, he'd use Ken's military status to shield himself. My son's a high-ranking officer in the army. You lay a hand on me and you'll regret it for life. Back in those days, having a son who was an army officer meant prestige. No one in the village dared mess with the Kens. If they got stolen from, they'd just swallow the loss. But now, seeing the family falling apart, how could the villagers not be gleeful? They gathered around to watch like it was a free show. When they saw me lying there unscathed, dramatically rolling on the ground and crying, many of them covered their mouths to stifle laughter. Ken, having recovered a bit, was seething with rage. Pointing at me, he roared, "You crazy witch! Sue, you're out of your damn mind. Call me a crazy witch? Fine, I'll give you a show worth the name." I screamed even louder. I gave everything to this family. I worked like an ox, cooking, cleaning, raising children, taking care of your parents, and this is how you repay me? Ken, you heartless bastard, cheating on me with that shameless tramp Linda. As I shouted out their filthy affair, Ken, his face swollen, and Linda, blood dripping from her nose and mouth, both froze in shock. Ken, ignoring his pain, pointed at me. "Sue, you keep running your mouth like that, and I swear I'll make you pay. Make your mother pay." I snapped back in my head, sneering inside. "You can't even protect yourself, and you still think you've got control?" I rubbed my eyes for dramatic effect. There were no actual tears, and kept crying loudly. Ken brought Linda into this house and kept her here for years. I always thought it was just because she saved his life. I had no idea the two of them were sleeping together behind my back. Sleeping together? Seriously? "That's crossing a line," one of the villagers whispered. "This isn't just infidelity, that's misconduct. He could be discharged for that," another chimed in. Hearing the gossip spread like wildfire, Ken began to panic. "Sue, you're slandering me. You can't say that without proof. That's defamation, and it's a criminal offense." "I'm not slandering you," I said, my voice steady. "I have proof. Let me show everyone." I marched right over to Linda, still bleeding from the nose, and yanked open her collar. "Take a look, everyone. See for yourselves." All eyes turned to her neck. "What is that?" one of the villagers muttered. "Wait, is that what I think it is? Looks like a hickey to me, no doubt about it." "Sk, she's been having her fun, huh?" "Yup, anyone with eyes can see what's going on here." Well, well, little widow, how do you explain this? Linda scrambled to button up her shirt, furious and humiliated. This, this was from when she hit me, and scratches from the cat and mosquito bites too. I scoffed. Why are you even trying to cover it up? Everyone around had eyes as sharp as a hawk. If you've got nothing to hide, someone said, then just show us. Let's all take a look and see if those marks are really from her hitting you. What kind of cat scratches look like that, and what kind of mosquito bites leave those kinds of marks? Of course, Linda didn't dare. She let out a few sobs and threw herself toward the wall, pretending to want to kill herself. Ken and Martha immediately rushed to stop her, fast as lightning. Linda didn't actually want to die. It was all for show. Between sniffles and sobs, she said, I can accept being hit during a fight, but being slandered like this? How could I possibly show my face again? I'd rather die. She shoved Martha and Ken aside and bolted toward the door, clearly trying to flee the scene rather than end her life. But like hell, I was going to let her run. I grabbed a fistful of her hair and yanked her back into the courtyard. Ken looked like his heart was being shredded to pieces. His voice cracked as he roared, Sue, let Linda go right now. Are you really trying to cause someone's death over lies? Like I'd let her go. I could see some of the more naive villagers starting to sympathize with Linda and her fake suicide stunt, so I acted quickly. I grabbed her hair again, tore open her shirt collar, and yanked off the jade pendant hanging around her neck. Holding it high, I shouted to the gathering crowd, This jade pendant is mine. It's the only keepsake my parents left me. I gave it to Ken for protection, and now it's on Linda's neck. You all tell me, how did that happen? Whatever sympathy the villagers had started to feel vanished instantly. Their eyes lit up like they just stumbled upon a treasure trove of gossip, and the murmuring began. He gave his wife's protective charm to another woman to wear? If that's not suspicious, I don't know what is. Exactly. I think there's something fishy going on here. Isn't this like in those romance novels where the man gives his lover a token of affection? Totally. I've read those old storybooks. This is exactly how the lovers exchange keepsakes. As the honest villagers chattered on, Ken glared at me, furious. Sue, stop making a scene. That pendant wasn't a love token. It's just, you said it was lucky, and Linda said she wasn't feeling well, so I let her wear it for a few days. That's all. Oh, really? I sneered. Well, let's check the rest of the evidence, shall we? I dashed into the next room, Linda's room, grabbed the silk scarves, leather shoes, clothes, and the wristwatch that Ken had bought her, and threw them all out onto the ground. Look at all this. Where did a poor widow with no man in her life get the money for all this stuff? That shameless woman stole my man and even dared to show off about it, told me straight to my face that he often buys her things. How is that fair? Linda opened her mouth to argue, but the words wouldn't come. She didn't understand how the same stories she used to brag about were suddenly coming back to destroy her. The neighbors began picking up the items and examining them. This watch is expensive, someone said. I saw it in the city. Costs more than $100. Yeah, and these leather shoes, rural folks don't wear stuff like this. And this silk thing? I saw rich women in the city wearing those around their necks. One by one, everyone's eyes shifted from the luxury items to Linda and Ken, studying them from head to toe. Linda's face was still a mess of blood, and she couldn't muster any expression. But faced with such undeniable evidence, she didn't dare say a single word. She just stared at Ken, pleading for help. Ken turned toward me, shouting, Sue, stop talking nonsense. That stuff wasn't bought with my money. It was from Spring's death pension. He was a martyr. The military sends money regularly, and I was just delivering it on his behalf. Did he really think I was still the same clueless, foolish Sue from my past life? I instantly snapped back. If the military's been giving her money all this time, then why did you bring her into this house to take care of her? If she's got her own money, why couldn't she live alone? And why are you taking her with you to the base? The fact that Ken was planning to bring Linda with him to live on the army base had only been known by a few people. Now that I had exposed it in public, the villagers were stunned. Sure, her husband died, and she's entitled to a pension, someone said, but she's still a widow, and she gets to go live on the army base now too? How come I've never heard of anything like that happening before? Someone in the crowd asked. Yeah, something's fishy for sure, another villager muttered. Hearing the murmurs from the crowd, Ken realized he couldn't hide the truth any longer. If I kept pushing, everything, including his last shred of dignity, would be stripped away. He had to act fast. With a sharp glare, he shouted at me, Spring died saving my life. Taking care of Linda and her son is the least I can do out of gratitude. As a military wife, you should be understanding, compassionate, and tolerant. Since you're being so unreasonable, Sue, he continued, don't blame me for what happens next. Oh, I asked, mocking him. And what exactly are you going to do? I want a divorce. In my last life, those 4 words from Ken had crushed me completely. But did he really think I'd still be that easy to manipulate in this life? I dropped to the ground again and started rolling and wailing louder than ever. So it's true. You really are cheating on me with that shameless woman. You're divorcing me for her. Oh God, what kind of horrible fate is this? I howled. Let me tell you something, Ken, I cried. I'm not letting this go. If you dare divorce me, I'll go straight to the military leadership and ask them what's really going on. I'll kill myself if I have to. I screamed even louder. My voice shook the walls. Ken hadn't expected me to go all out like this. He panicked. He couldn't risk me making more of a scene. Stop it, he said, backing down. If you don't want Linda to come with me to the base, fine. I won't take her. You're serious. I stopped crying instantly. Yes. Why would I lie to you? Then make her leave. Tell her to go and stay far away. I will, he promised quickly. I knew this heartless man was already cooking up a backup plan. But that didn't matter. All this noise I was making was just to vent my anger and take back what I was owed. So I raised the stakes. I want the leather shoes. I want the silk scarf. I want the watch. And I want nice new clothes. If you don't buy them for me, I'll keep this up. Ken gritted his teeth. Fine. As long as you stop making a scene, I'll give you whatever you want. I don't trust you. Give me the money right now. I want it in cash. In my last life, when I was packing Ken's bags, I'd found a stash of money, hundreds, hidden in a secret pocket. But this time, I wasn't going to miss my chance. That money was mine now. Trying to keep the peace, Ken took out the cash and handed it to me. I stuffed it in my pocket and stopped the tantrum. His whole family hobbled off together to nurse their wounds. I quietly slipped under the window to eavesdrop and heard Martha ranting angrily. That Sue's gone completely crazy. She's nothing like before. Did she get possessed by something? She must have, Frank muttered. Otherwise she wouldn't have dared fight back like that. I'm telling you, he added, maybe we should find a spiritual master to take a look. Take a look at what? Ken snapped, clearly irritated. I told you to behave and stop provoking her. Are you insane, running your mouth in front of her like that? I'm not crazy. Then tell me. How did she know I gave Linda those gifts? How did she know Linda was wearing the jade pendant? Linda said nothing. Ken was furious. Something is seriously off about today. I've got a bad feeling. I'm going to test Sue tomorrow, he said, lowering his voice. If she's still the same Sue we know, she'll be easy to fool. But if someone else is in her place, we're in big trouble. Someone else? Linda asked quickly. What does that even mean? Ken replied, annoyed. It's like foreknowledge. Like she knows things before they happen. If that's really what's going on, we need a new plan. And if worst comes to worst. From the strange noise in the room and the heavy sound of Ken's voice, I knew he was making a violent gesture. I silently crept back to my bedroom and bolted the door. Ken suspected me now. He was starting to believe I'd been replaced. How could he know? Foreknowledge? Could it be he came back too? If that was true, I'd have to stay sharp. That whole family was wicked to the bone. A single misstep could mean death. The night passed quietly. Early the next morning, Ken showed up at my door, his face still swollen. He said, Sue, I've decided not to bring Linda with me to the base, Ken said. I'll send her back to her hometown. Really? I asked, narrowing my eyes. You're not lying to me, are you? It's true. The way you reacted yesterday, I get it. It was understandable, and I didn't handle the situation well. I was wrong, and I'll make it right. As he spoke, he watched my face carefully. His expression was different than usual. He clearly had doubts about me. I pretended to know nothing, waiting for him to make a move. Ken babbled on for a while longer, then suddenly locked eyes with me and asked, Sue, why do you seem like a completely different person all of a sudden? I sighed. I didn't want to act like that yesterday, but I was just so angry. Now the whole village is gossiping about you and Linda. I didn't want to believe it at first, but she ran right up to me and told me you bought her things, even showed me the marks on her neck. I stared straight at him. Ken, tell me the truth. Are you and Linda really innocent? I pushed all the blame onto Linda. She's the one who came onto me first. A flicker of darkness crossed Ken's eyes. He believed me. After all, Linda had done the same kind of thing before. I swear, Ken said quickly, there's nothing between me and Linda. Absolutely nothing. Don't believe those rumors. Last night was just a misunderstanding. I only bought her a few things with Spring's death pension. That's all. He grabbed my hand and swore, Sue, you're the only one I've ever truly liked. You're kind, understanding. I loved you from the moment I saw you. Once, those sweet words would have melted my heart. But now, they made my stomach turn. Still, I held back my disgust and let him hold my hand. If he was going to put on an act, I'd play along. I didn't trust you before, I said softly. I thought you and Linda were involved. But now that you're saying you'll send her away, I feel better. Ken, I'm sorry I accused you. I returned to the same dumb, sweet, naive act I used to put on. Ken relaxed completely. Don't worry, he said. I'll send her off today. I'm heading back to the base soon and my leave's almost up. My parents aren't doing well either, so I'll be counting on you to look after things at home. You don't have to worry, I said with a smile. Your parents are my parents too. I'll take good care of them. I agreed without hesitation, but deep down I still felt uneasy. Linda said you secretly gave her your entire salary, I added. I didn't want to believe it at first, but the truth is, I haven't seen you bring back any money all these years. So when you return to the base this time, you need to send all your salary and allowances home to me. I'll keep it safe. Ken's face instantly soured. Even if I'm not at home, I still need money. I can't send it all. I'll give you half. Fine, I said. I don't need the full amount. Just give me half today. But I still wasn't satisfied. I'm worried you'll take Linda with you behind my back. You have to write a formal statement promising you won't. Sign and fingerprint it. Ken clearly didn't want to, but he had no choice. He scribbled out a promise and handed it to me. I took it and tucked it away. When I didn't ask for anything more, Ken finally relaxed. He even smiled and reached for my hand. Sue, he said, where's the jade pendant? That was the token of love you gave me. Let me have it back. I pulled out the pendant, holding it in my hand. If I give it to you, can you promise to keep it on you at all times, and never let it end up around Linda's neck again? Never again, he said quickly. Heaven is my witness. I only let her wear it because she wasn't feeling well, and I thought it would protect her. But I won't do that again. I swear I'll keep it safe for the rest of my life. I gently wiped the pendant, showing no sign of actually handing it over. Sue, please, Ken urged. You have to believe me. I won't give it to anyone else ever again, I promise. Just give it to me and I'll send Linda and her son away today. I looked into his eyes and saw the greed he couldn't quite hide. I curled the corner of my mouth into a faint smile. So that's how it is. If I didn't hand him the pendant today, he'd never truly believe me. Fine. For the bigger picture, I'd give it to him. I handed the jade pendant to Ken, and he eagerly snatched it up like a monkey grabbing fruit, and immediately put it on. That very day, true to his word, Ken did send off the bruised and battered Linda and her son. 3 days later, in a hurry, he rushed back to rejoin his unit. Before he left, he reminded me over and over again to take good care of his parents, and also look after his illegitimate daughter, Emily. Of course, I agreed with a smile and sweet words. Ken could rest easy. I, Sue, swore to the heavens. I would definitely take very, very good care of Martha, Frank, and that ungrateful, snake-hearted thing, Emily. The day after Ken left, I didn't get up early to cook like I used to. It was summer, and instead of waking up at dawn to work like a mule, I stayed in bed with the door shut, sleeping soundly and comfortably. Martha had expected me to get up and serve them like I had in the previous life, cooking, doing laundry, being their slave. But when there was still no sound from my room by 9 a.m., she marched over to knock on my door, dragging Emily along with her, both of them fuming. The sun's halfway up your butt, Sue? Why are you still in bed? Get up and make breakfast. Your father-in-law, Emily, and I are starving. And once you're done, head to the fields and pull weeds. Don't forget to take the cow, too. I opened the door and looked Martha up and down. What? Are your hands and feet broken? Can't you cook for yourself? She was stunned that I dared speak to her that way. Her face turned red with fury. You little tramp! What did you just say? She shouted, reaching out to grab my hair like she always did. I sidestepped, and she lost her balance, tumbling forward and hitting the ground face first like a pig rooting in the mud. Emily rushed to help her up, panicked. Grandma, are you okay? Does it hurt? Well, so this little snake actually knows how to care about people? In my past life, I worked myself half to death, spinning around like a top for this family, and not once did she ask if I was okay. So it wasn't that she didn't know how. It was just that I didn't deserve it. You little brat. Did you think I'd let you off easy? Today I'll show you what I'm really made of. I reached behind the door and grabbed the bamboo stick I had prepared in advance. The moment I picked it up, Martha, still on the ground, instinctively scrambled back a few inches. The beating I gave her the other day had clearly left a mark. She was afraid I'd do it again. But I didn't have time to waste on Martha. I had someone far more important to deal with. I raised the bamboo stick and grabbed Emily by the arm, lashing it down on her without mercy. You lazy brat, you don't do a damn thing but eat, drink, and mess around all day. I hurt my back, and you didn't even think to go boil a pot of porridge for me. What did I raise you for? I should have just beaten you to death. The bamboo cane came down on her like pounding rain. Emily screamed and wailed like a ghost, but I didn't let up, not even for a second. This little monster, I loved her like my own flesh and blood in my past life, nearly gave my life for her. When she wanted fruit candy, I denied myself food and water just to save enough money to buy it. When she wanted nice clothes and Ken didn't send any money home, I slept only 2 or 3 hours a night and sold goods at the street market, just so she could have pretty dresses. I had suffered enough. I didn't want my daughter to grow up illiterate and break her back in the fields like I had. I poured my heart and soul into her education, working like a maniac to send her away to a better life. And what did she do? She turned out more venomous than a snake. She never once showed me an ounce of gratitude and even turned around to betray me in the most brutal way. The rage inside me burned like a volcano, completely uncontrollable. I didn't hit her hard enough to break bones, but that bamboo stick left stinging welts with every strike. The pain was more than enough. Emily shrieked and screamed for Martha to save her. Martha rushed forward, trying to pull me off, but I shoved her aside. Back off. I'm disciplining my daughter. This has nothing to do with you. This ungrateful, lazy wretch. Today I'm going to teach her a lesson she'll never forget. She needs to learn what it means to be a heartless daughter who doesn't care that her own mother is sick. In my past life, the pain I suffered was 1,000 times worse than what Emily was feeling now. I swore I would make her taste even a fraction of that pain I once endured. The bamboo stick in my hand finally snapped, so I grabbed another, then another. After going through 3 sticks in a row, Martha finally rushed forward and dragged Emily away from me, shielding her like a lifeline. I was exhausted from the beating. I threw down the bamboo stick, put my hands on my hips, and shouted after them. You worthless brat, go cut grass and take the cow out to pasture. And while you're at it, bring back some pigweed. Wash the clothes too. If I catch you slacking off, I won't go easy on you. Emily, who had never done a day of work in her life, left with an empty stomach, a basket on her back, and a rope in her hand to lead the cow. I had also told her to sweep the floor, do the laundry, and feed the pigs. Martha, not wanting her precious granddaughter to suffer, reluctantly stepped in to help. She wasn't born vicious or heartless. She just chose to turn a blind eye, because the person suffering was me. In her mind, I never deserved better. I was born to be used, to be trampled on. From that day on, whenever I was in a bad mood, I'd take it out on Emily. In my last life, I had sent her off to school the moment she turned 7. This time, no chance. Her life was now destined to revolve around chores, cutting grass, herding cattle, feeding pigs, doing laundry. That was her new standard of living. And it wasn't just the endless labor, she also had to endure my occasional discipline sessions. By the time she turned 8, she was malnourished from my neglect. Dark-skinned, bony, her hair dry and yellow. She never once asked for pretty clothes or sweet candy again. Her days were nothing but labor, sunrise to sundown. Martha and Frank's lives also flipped upside down compared to the last life. Frank's health was poor, and he needed medicine constantly. I never gave a cent, never lifted a finger to help. If he got sick, he'd just have to suffer through it himself. When I heard him groaning and wailing in pain every day, I felt nothing. No pity. No sympathy. That old leech, whether in my past life or this one, he and Martha had known the truth from the start. They never once felt guilty, never showed an ounce of remorse. They just shamelessly used me, drained me dry until I died. For people as wicked and disgusting as them, I had no mercy to give. I didn't even need to lift a hand. All I had to do was stand there and watch, just like they once did. Watch them struggle, cry, suffer in the mud. That was enough. Because I would die before I became their beast of burden again. Without me carrying the load, that role fell squarely on Martha's shoulders. She tried to fight back at first, tried to pretend she could push through. But it didn't matter how hard she tried. Anytime there was work, I'd suddenly feel sick. Today it was stomach pain, tomorrow a headache, the next day, joint pain. Whenever work came up, I fell ill. I still had a few $100 I'd wrangled from Ken. That was enough to keep me from starving. But Martha, she didn't have the luxury of playing dead. Her husband, her granddaughter, and her own mouth all needed feeding. Without me, the family mule, Martha became the beast of burden herself. The daily grind crushed her. Whenever she saw people, she'd start complaining bitterly about how I was lazy and refused to work. But no one sympathized with her. After all, everything I was doing now was just what she had done to me before. After 3 months of giving her family hell, I finally decided to show a bit of mercy. I had more important things to do. Ken and Linda, the real scum, were still out there living comfortably. It was time for them to face the music. Without telling Martha or Frank, I grabbed Emily and went straight to the army base to find Ken. Emily had changed after 3 months of hard labor. At first, she tried to win my favor with sweet talk and fake kindness. But when she realized it made no difference, that I treated her exactly the same no matter what, she gave up. Now, whenever she saw me, she'd instinctively avoid me. That's why I found it strange when she didn't resist at all after I told her we were going to visit Ken at the base. In fact, she agreed right away and followed me obediently. That didn't make sense. If anything, she should have been trying to stay far away from me. Why was Emily so willing to go with me to the base? I grew suspicious. That night, after Emily fell asleep, I checked her thoroughly, and sure enough, I found a letter hidden in the lining of her clothes. In it, she had written out a detailed report of all my so-called crimes. She accused me of being violent and vicious and begged Ken and Linda to avenge her. She even wrote that they should help her get rid of me, the cruel, shameless woman ruining her life. She said she wanted to return to school immediately to get into Peking or Tsinghua University. Looking at the neatly written, eloquent words on that page, I couldn't help but laugh. In this life, Emily didn't even know where the school gate was, let alone how to write this well. So tidy, so expressive, so well organized. There was no doubt about it now. Emily, just like me, had come back from a previous life. Well now, wasn't that interesting? I had always thought it was just Ken and me who had been reborn. I never imagined that this little snake had come back too. Oh, but that made things even better. Because revenge only truly feels satisfying when the other person knows exactly why it's happening. After 3 days and 2 nights of jolting along on a train, I finally arrived at Ken's military base with Emily in tow. It was midnight when we got there. Emily, barely able to keep her eyes open, stumbled along behind me, half dragging our things as we made our way toward Ken's housing. We walked for more than 2 hours and finally reached our destination around 3 a.m. A guard stood at the entrance and refused to let us in. I said nothing. Instead, I pushed Emily forward to talk. Just as I expected, not even 8 years old, she spoke clearly and confidently. She gave Ken's full name, military rank and position, and then explained that she was his daughter. When she mentioned me, she didn't call me Mom. She called me Aunt. The young guard looked at us, an exhausted woman and child arriving in the dead of night, and felt an overwhelming sense of sympathy. Without hesitation, he picked up our luggage and personally led us to Ken's quarters. I noticed Emily exhaling with relief. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, glanced sideways at me. That look, it was the same one I saw in my previous life, right before I died. So she had been eagerly waiting for me to fall, to fail. Sorry, sweetheart, you're about to be sorely disappointed. The guard knocked politely on Ken's door for us. No one answered. Emily grew impatient. So did I. Without waiting any longer, I pulled out the small tool I always carried and quickly jimmied the lock open. I pushed the door wide. Emily raced inside before me, shouting, "Daddy!" I followed quickly behind. She threw open the bedroom door, and there they were, Ken and Linda, sleeping in each other's arms, startled awake by the commotion. Before they could even register what was happening, I let out a furious scream and lunged. "Ken, you heartless bastard, cheating on me behind my back?" Everything happened in a flash. I charged forward and raised my hand, clutching my blunt metal tool, and laid into him with everything I had. Ken's head burst open with blood. It sprayed across the room, splattering Linda's stunned face. Once I finished with him, I yanked Linda by her hair and dragged her off the bed. "You filthy tramp, seducing my husband? Cheating in my home?" Every slap landed with the crispest, most satisfying sound. Linda shrieked. She tried to resist, but I had her by the hair and she had no strength to fight me off. All she could do was scream and cry. Emily, seeing me beating her biological mother, charged at me again, just like in our past life. But I was ready this time. Before she got close, I kicked her hard and sent her rolling across the floor. No time to waste. Still holding on to Linda by the hair, her naked body trembling, I dragged her across the room like a dog. Sobbing and shouting, I yanked her out the door. The guard who had brought us stood frozen in place, stunned. His first instinct was to step in and stop me. But when he saw Linda was completely naked, he reflexively turned his head away. By then, I'd already dragged her out into the open and thrown her down on the steps outside Ken's door. I punched and kicked her with every ounce of strength I had, all while screaming so loud I thought my throat would tear. "Ken, you ungrateful piece of trash. You made me, your legal wife, stay home, caring for your parents, raising your child. And meanwhile, you're out here with another woman? Building a second home behind my back? Do you even have a conscience? I've been wronged. My life has been nothing but suffering. I want to see your commanding officer. Please, someone tell the higher-ups. I demand justice for this betrayal. This lying, cheating man is no better than a dog." My voice rang out through the night like thunder. So loud it shook the air. Everyone in the military compound woke up and came out to see what was going on. As I beat Linda senseless, I clearly and fluently explained my relationship with Ken, who I was, how I had been deceived, and how they had betrayed me. The commotion was impossible to ignore. Even the officers, awakened from their sleep, rushed over in alarm. Linda was already unconscious from the beating. I let go of her and dropped to my knees with a heavy thud right in front of the commanding officer. "Sir, please, you must help me. I have no way out. I've been wronged." The officer ordered a guard to take Linda away for medical attention and had me brought to the office for questioning. He looked at me sternly and said, "As far as I know, Ken and Linda are legally married. They registered their marriage properly. You keep insisting you're his wife. Do you have any proof that what you're saying is true?" Of course, I already knew that Ken and I never had a legal marriage certificate. In my past life, he had secretly registered his marriage with Linda behind my back. No doubt he had done the same in this life, but I'd come prepared. Knowing exactly how this would play out, I took out all the letters Ken had written to me, including the personal written pledge he used to deceive me. The officer read them thoroughly. With every line, his face darkened. "This is outrageous. Absolutely disgraceful." Acting swiftly, the military leadership made calls to Ken's hometown to verify the situation. Local officials and villagers all confirmed that I was the one living with Ken as his wife, not Linda. The facts were undeniable. The verdict came down fast. Ken was dishonorably discharged from the army. All his ranks and titles were revoked. When the punishment was officially announced, I held my head high. I was vindicated. Ken, on the other hand, looked utterly defeated. His face was still marred by the gashes I'd left with my tool. Covered in bruises and blood, he glared at me with cold hatred. "Sue, you're ruthless," he spat. "A quiet dog bites the hardest. You destroyed my entire career without making a sound. You just wait." I wasn't afraid of this paper tiger. I smiled sweetly and replied, "I'm waiting. After all, you and that woman still haven't suffered nearly enough." "Ken, aren't you the least bit curious how I found out about your affair? Don't tell me. You came back too?" "What are you talking about?" he asked, his eyes narrowing. I played dumb. "Came back? What do you mean? You really didn't relive it?" Ken studied me carefully, clearly suspicious. There was no way I would admit to being reborn. Not yet. Not when I still had plans to let these snakes tear each other apart. So I casually explained, if it weren't for Emily talking in her sleep, calling Linda Mom, and if I hadn't overheard her and your mother talking, I never would have known how you all lied to me. Ken looked genuinely shocked. "So it was my mother and Emily who gave it away?" "Not just them," I said coldly. "Linda told me plenty too. Since I'm setting the dogs loose on each other, of course she couldn't be left out. The truth is, I never suspected anything between you and Linda. I honestly believed you were just helping her out of gratitude. But then she started provoking me, showing off the hickeys you gave her, flaunting the clothes you bought her, bragging about the money." I stared at Ken's face, watching the uncertainty twist his features. "You remember what you were doing in our bed with her the last time you came home, don't you?" I asked. I didn't know a thing before that, but she practically shoved the evidence in my face, in my own bedroom. I was heartbroken, furious. "I've worked like a dog for your family, and this is how you repay me? With betrayal and humiliation? Ken, you deserve to rot for what you've done." I finished, and Ken's face turned a frightening shade of gray. He was furious. I knew exactly what he was thinking. He'd blame Emily, his mother, and Linda for ruining everything. And just as I hoped, they'd all pay for it in their own way. Sure enough, later that evening at the guest house, I saw Emily with her face covered in bruises and Linda limping, unable to walk properly. When they saw me, mother and daughter both looked furious. Emily stared daggers at me, filled with hate. I just smiled brightly at them. They were furious, and I loved every second of it. But their rage meant nothing. They couldn't lay a hand on me. They knew it, and so did I. Emily gritted her teeth and muttered, "Look at that smug face. You think you've won just because my dad got fired? Don't be so naive. I'm telling you, we're only going to rise higher from here. And you, your whole life, you'll be nothing but a lowlife. Always." That was rich, really. Even after everything, she still dreamed of turning the tables? Well then, I couldn't wait to see exactly how they planned to do that. Ken had already been discharged from the military and disgraced. The only card they had left to play was using my jade pendant to impersonate me and seek out my birth family. The thought made me laugh coldly. In my previous life, without me ever knowing, they had stolen my identity. But this time, they had the pendant in hand, and I was fully aware. If they moved, I'd follow, and through them, I'd finally find my real parents. As I suspected, Ken took Linda and their children to the capital to reunite with my biological family. I knew they were posing as me, stealing what was mine. But in my previous life, I never found out who my wealthy parents were. That was the only reason I hadn't demanded the pendant back yet. Disguised and cautious, I watched their every move. Those two snakes bought train tickets to the capital with their 2 kids. I dressed up nicely, wrapped my head to only show my eyes, and bought a ticket to follow them. 2 days later, the train arrived in the capital. Ken, Linda, Emily, and their son stepped out of the station and hailed a cab. I hailed one right after and followed close behind. They wound through narrow streets and bumpy roads for more than 30 kilometers before their car finally stopped in front of a row of European-style buildings. Ken got out with Linda and the 2 children and led them through a large iron gate. I paid my fare and quietly followed at a distance. Eventually, they stopped in front of a large villa with a beautifully kept garden. I watched as Ken took the jade pendant from around his own neck and gently placed it around Linda's. Then he leaned close and whispered something to her for a long time, before finally ringing the doorbell. A young woman opened the door. I wasn't close enough to hear what she and Ken were saying, but I could see her eyes scan the group. Ken, Linda, and the two kids, before stepping aside and inviting them in. The iron gate closed behind them. I slowly stepped out from where I'd been hiding and walked up to the villa. This was it. My parents had to be the ones living inside. The keepsake they had left me, the jade pendant, was now around Linda's neck. That was how, in my last life, they had mistaken her for their daughter based on Ken's lies. But this time wouldn't be so easy. Last time, I hadn't known the truth and had no way to fight back. This time, I was here, ready to ruin their little charade. I unraveled the scarf wrapped around my head, revealing my face. I straightened my clothes and raised my hand to ring the doorbell, when suddenly, I heard the sound of a car pulling up behind me. Startled, I turned around and saw a car stop right beside me. The door flew open, and a middle-aged man stepped out, moving quickly. His eyes locked on my face, filled with disbelief. You're... The way he stared at me so intensely made me instinctively step back, startled. Behind me was a blooming rose bush. I nearly fell into it, until the man lunged forward and grabbed my hand. Even after he had my hand in his grasp, his eyes wouldn't leave my face. I saw the glint of tears rising in them. Almost shouting, his voice cracked as he called, "Shumin! Shumin! Come out! You need to see this!" The door to the villa opened. A refined, elegant woman in her mid-40s stepped out. She was beautiful, well-dressed, and carried herself with grace. Her eyes landed on me, and when she saw the man holding my hand, her breath caught. "Nana," she gasped. "That's my Nana." I stood there frozen. No introduction, no explanation. Just one look at her face, so similar to mine, the same features carved into a different life, and I knew instantly this was my real mother. She and my father threw themselves at me, arms wrapping tightly around me as tears soaked through my clothes. Their embrace was desperate, full of the love that had been stolen from us for so many years. I had prepared a dozen things to say. I had planned to storm in, expose Linda's lies, and prepare myself for the possibility that my real parents might not believe me, especially without DNA test results or the pendant. But I never imagined, with just one look, they knew. Compared to me, the fake in the house, holding my pendant, was no threat at all. My parents held me tight, crying and laughing at the same time. Clutching my hands, they pulled me into the living room. There, on the couch, sat Ken and Linda with their two kids, stiff and nervous. In front of them were plates of pastries, candies, and fresh fruit. Linda's son didn't dare touch anything. But Emily, who had come back to life like me, knew how this would play out, and was happily helping herself with both hands, eating like it was the best thing she'd ever tasted. When they heard movement, all four of them looked up. The moment they saw me, Ken and Linda shot to their feet. "What are you doing here?" I looked at them coldly. "Why? Do I need your permission to visit my parents' home? And what are you two doing here, sneaking in with my jade pendant, trying to impersonate me, maybe? You're making things up." Linda tried to defend herself. "That pendant, it's mine. It belongs to me." But she gave up almost immediately. One look at the disdain in my parents' eyes, and she knew she'd lost. Especially when she saw my mother's face, so identical to mine. It was impossible to keep lying. For the first time, I had someone to stand behind me, a family. I turned to my parents, clear and direct, and told them everything. These two monsters tricked me. They stole my jade pendant and left me behind in the countryside to work like a slave for them, cooking, cleaning, raising their child for free. My father didn't waste time with questions. He just waved his hand. "So should I call security to escort you out? Or are you going to leave on your own?" Ken and Linda were thrown out, embarrassed and humiliated. The jade pendant stayed. I poured my heart out to my parents, telling them everything I'd endured all those years. My mother cried until her eyes were red and swollen. She couldn't even speak through the sobs. My father kept rubbing his eyes too, blinking back tears. Later, my mother took me upstairs for a bath and gave me fresh clothes. While I was washing up, I heard my father downstairs on the phone, coldly arranging for those who had hurt me to be held accountable. I want every last one of those people who bullied my daughter to pay. After that day, I didn't bother following what happened to Ken and Linda. I had finally returned to my real family. I was surrounded by the love I had never known. It was like all the affection they'd saved up over the years they'd lost me was being poured out all at once. While enjoying the material comfort, I also focused on improving myself. My parents hired private tutors to help me prepare for the college entrance exam. College, just the word, had been a distant fantasy in my last life. Back then, the Ken family used me like a beast of burden. Even if I had dreams of studying, they stayed in my dreams. That's why I poured everything into Emily, thinking she was my only hope. But this time, I didn't have to do anything for anyone else. I gave all my energy to myself. For once, I lived for me. Having lived one lifetime already, I worked harder than anyone. Under the guidance of my tutors, I took the entrance exam and passed with a solid score. I got into a university in the capital. Finishing college at 30 was a brand new experience, but it felt free. I lived with ease and no pressure. My parents never pushed me. They just let things unfold naturally. After suffering so much betrayal in my past life, I had no plans to get married. I thought I'd live this life peacefully and alone until the end, but fate had other plans. He was the son of my parents' close friends, a handsome overseas returnee, educated in the West, charming and funny. After a few meetings, we both felt the spark. As we worked and lived together, things developed naturally, and we ended up getting married. 2 years later, I gave birth to our beautiful baby. I didn't stay home just to raise children. I ran my parents' vast business empire while also being a mother. I raised 2 wonderful kids, smart, kind, and loving. Time flew by. 20 years passed in the blink of an eye. At this same point in my last life, I had already been worn down by life, aged and broken like an old fish gasping on land. But in this life, I had no such pain. I lived freely and confidently. In my 40s, I still looked youthful. Using the experience I gained from my past life, I expanded my parents' company and brought it to new heights. I donated large sums of money, founded a charity organization, and helped those in need. I never forgot the hard days in the countryside. Even though the Ken family had treated me like dirt, the other villagers were kind. They helped me with back-breaking chores, shared their food when I had nothing. For their kindness, I invested billions into building a livestock farm back in the village. The livestock business I invested in lifted the local villagers into prosperity. They were people who knew how to repay kindness and had always been genuinely grateful to me. And honestly, I missed them too. Their honesty, their warmth. It just so happened that I had a business conference in a nearby city, so I asked my driver to take a detour through the village. The countryside had changed drastically. The development was beyond anything I imagined. It was nothing like how it used to be. I spent the entire ride marveling at everything. When we arrived at the village committee office, I was warmly welcomed by the locals. The younger generation didn't recognize me, but I shook hands and exchanged greetings with the young village leaders. Then suddenly, a woman wearing a chunky gold bracelet came rushing out. "Sue, are you Sue? Oh my God, I finally get to see you again." It was Mrs. Guohua. She was afraid I might not recognize her, so she introduced herself. "Sue, it's me, Mrs. Guohua." I looked at her white-streaked hair and couldn't hold back the emotion. I embraced her tightly. She invited me to her home for dumplings. As she made them, she told me how much life had changed in the past 20 years. Her family had built a multi-story house, opened a large-scale livestock farm, and even her grandson had been accepted into college. She said their good life was all thanks to me, that I was their family's benefactor. Then she brought up the Ken family. "That heartless bunch," she said. "They finally got what they deserved." Mrs. Guohua told me that after Ken was discharged from the army, he went to the capital with Linda, supposedly to live the high life. But within half a month they came crawling back, broken, beaten, and disgraced. Ken came back with a crippled leg. Linda had lost an arm. Emily had lost an ear. Only their son fared slightly better, but even he had lost 2 fingers. Their return caused a huge stir in the village. Everyone went out to gawk. The Kens slammed the door shut, refusing to let anyone in, but word got out anyway. Everyone in the village found out the disgusting truth about Ken and Linda. That Emily was actually their illegitimate child. The whole family became the laughingstock of the town. No one respected them anymore. People called them immoral, shameless, unfit to be human. It turned out Linda had given birth to Emily and her son not long after her previous husband's death. His family had always thought those kids were theirs and had been giving Linda money all along. When the truth came out, her ex-husband's relatives stormed in, demanding answers. Ken and Linda were beaten badly and had to compensate the family for all those years of support. With no jobs and no money, Ken and Linda constantly fought. Martha cursed Linda every day, calling her a jinx who ruined her son's life and left him disabled. And it wasn't just yelling. She physically beat Linda too. When Linda tried to fight back, Ken would jump in and hit her as well. He'd curse her and Emily both, saying they were the ones who ruined everything. If they hadn't been so arrogant, if they hadn't exposed his secrets, he wouldn't have lost everything. Eventually, Linda couldn't take the abuse anymore and tried to escape. Ken dragged her back and broke both her legs. That got him thrown in jail for several years. With no able-bodied workers left, their family became the poorest in the village. Their son, now almost 30, hadn't found a wife. Missing 2 fingers, no one wanted to marry him. As for Emily, she'd been married off, sold, really, for a dowry of a few $1,000 to an old bachelor 20 years her senior. He was a drunk who loved to beat people. Since the day she married him, there hadn't been a single spot on her body that wasn't bruised. I listened quietly, only smiling. So the Ken family really had fallen that far? Good. I could rest easy now. As I got ready to leave the village, Mrs. Guahua loaded my car with local specialties, gifts of gratitude. Just as I was about to get in, I noticed someone staring at me from the corner of the street. I turned and saw her, a woman missing both ears, looking ragged and broken. It was Emily. She looked years older than she should have, and when she recognized me, her eyes lit up. She ran toward me, frantic and desperate. My bodyguards and driver immediately stepped in and blocked her path. She got shoved to the ground. I looked down at her, smiling sweetly. Enjoy it while it lasts, Emily. You need to experience the same despair I felt in my past life, I said calmly. At my words, Emily's face instantly turned ashen, drained of all color. You came back too? That's right, I answered with a cold smile. I came back to personally send your whole family off to that wonderful life you always dreamed of, to help reunite you all sooner rather than later. Isn't that what you wanted most? As the car drove away, I glanced back through the window. Emily was still standing in the same spot, frozen like a statue, completely dazed. Then a man approached from the other end of the street, grabbed her by the hair, and dragged her away. Even from a long distance, I could hear her howls, loud, painful, and miserable. Isn't it a little late to start crying now? I didn't know if she ever truly regretted it. Maybe, if she had the slightest bit of conscience left, she might regret treating me so cruelly back then. But in this world, there's no such thing as a pill for regret. And I'm no saint. I feel no sympathy for those who once destroyed me. On the contrary, I hope Emily lives a long, long life in the world she helped create, because death would be a mercy. Living, that's the real punishment.